You feel it in your throat before the word leaves your mouth. A tightening, a tremor. A silent apology already forming behind your teeth. That is not anxiety. That is the death rattle of a self you no longer need.
You have spent years suturing your boundaries with other people's expectations, stitching your worth to their approval like a hostage signing a confession under duress. But here is what no one told you. People-pleasing is not kindness. It is ego masquerading as compassion.
It is the soul's most sophisticated form of self-betrayal, disguised as virtue. And it ends not with a whimper, not with a resolution, but with a surgical silence. Epictetus. C.
55 to 135 AD Stoicism. If someone tells you that so-and-so speaks ill of you, do not defend yourself against what he says, but answer, "He did not know my other faults, or he would not have mentioned these alone." Epictetus. This is not philosophy. This is field medicine.
Stoicism was never written for scholars in quiet libraries. It was forged in exile camps, dictated from prison cells, whispered across marble floors where emperors watched for signs of dissent or, worse, disinterest.
When Domitian banished Epictetus in 93 CE, it wasn't because he preached rebellion. It was because he taught slaves and senators that their inner freedom could not be revoked even as their bodies were chained. That kind of immunity terrifies power, not because it resists,
but because it refuses to engage. Your mind is the only thing you truly control. The ego does not starve on criticism. It feasts on reaction. You think you're avoiding conflict. You're not.
You're feeding it. Every time you soften your stance, dilute your truth, or rehearse your explanation before speaking. Every "I'm sorry" that isn't about harm, but about discomfort. Every smile that doesn't reach your eyes. Every nod that contradicts your spine. This is not harmony.
This is internal colonization. And the first act of liberation is not to speak louder, but to stop speaking at all until speech becomes sovereign, not supplicant.
A no without explanation is not rudeness. It is the first incision in the autopsy of your people-pleasing self. You don't need to justify your boundaries. You need to enact them.
Like a surgeon who doesn't ask permission to cut away necrotic tissue, your no must land with the weight of biological necessity, not social negotiation. Think of the last time you said yes when your body recoiled. Not just your mind, your gut, your breath, the subtle withdrawal in your shoulders.
That recoil was your hegemonicon, your ruling faculty, sounding an alarm. And you muted it not once, but hundreds of times, so others wouldn't flinch. But here is the brutal arithmetic. Every suppressed no compounds. It accrues interest in resentment, fatigue, dissociation.
You don't lose energy arguing. You lose it preparing to argue, rehearsing the apology, anticipating the disappointment.
People-pleasing, chronic hypervigilance, cortisol dysregulation, cognitive depletion 68%, reduction in reactive cortisol spikes among consistent Stoic practitioners. This is why Epictetus called silence winter training, a deliberate, seasonal discipline to harden the mind against emotional frostbite.
Your no is not a boundary with someone else. It is a boundary within you, between the part of you that still believes love must be earned and the part that knows it is your birthright. Say it without preamble, without softening, without eye contact that begs forgiveness.
Let it land like stone in still water, not to wound, but to still. A no is not refusal. It is recalibration. You will feel guilt. That is not morality speaking. That is the ghost of childhood conditioning, whispering that your value collapses the moment you cease performing devotion.
Let it whisper. Don't answer it. Let silence be the scalpel that severs the tendon connecting your voice to their approval.
Society does not hate villains. It fears them because they cannot be bargained with, manipulated, or absorbed. And that is precisely why you must embrace the label, not as performance, but as protection. The villain arc is not about becoming cruel.
It is about becoming inexplicable to those who measure human worth in compliance. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire while surrounded by sycophants who memorized his sighs and interpreted his silences as omens.
Yet he spent an entire week speaking only to philosophers refusing courtly banter, declining ceremonial flattery, declining even to correct misrepresentations of his character. Why? Because he understood. To be completely misunderstood is the highest form of mental sovereignty.
When no one can narrate you accurately, no one owns your story. When your motives remain opaque, your actions become unassailable.
What agreeable leisure does he procure to himself, who takes no notice what others say, do, or intend, but attends to this only, that his own actions be just and holy. Marcus Aurelius, you are not who they say you are. You are who you do, in silence, in action, in refusal. This is not arrogance.
It is austerity. The villain arc is the conscious decision to stop translating your integrity into terms others find comfortable. You stop explaining why you don't attend weddings, why you don't return calls, why you don't perform gratitude on demand. The moment you stop needing to be understood is the moment your energy stops leaking outward and begins consolidating inward. Like water drawn into deep aquifers, your focus, your clarity, your presence, all begin to pool at your center.
That is where true power forms. Not in the glare of consensus, but in the absolute stillness of self-possession.
Likability is the last currency of the enslaved mind. It is traded in microtransactions. The laugh at the wrong joke, the nod at the hollow opinion, the silence when truth would cost you favor. But here is the irreversible truth. You cannot be both deeply liked and deeply free.
Not because people reject authenticity, but because authenticity disrupts the transactional architecture of social belonging. Stoics didn't seek to be loved. They sought to be unshakable. Seneca, facing forced suicide in 65 CE, calmly dictated letters to friends while his blood drained into a warm bath, not to impress, not to instruct, but to witness his own unwavering attention. His final act was not defiance. It was continuity.
He treated his dying breath as no different in moral weight than his first sip of morning water. That is the death of likability, not rejection of others,
but refusal to let their valuation distort your calibration. Likability is the price of admission to other people's reality.
Sovereignty is the refusal to pay it. The deepest silence is not absence of sound. It is absence of concession. When you stop optimizing for approval, something astonishing happens. Your perception sharpens. You hear the subtext in every request. You see the entitlement masked as concern.
You sense the manipulation disguised as vulnerability. You are no longer scanning faces for reassurance. You are reading the architecture of power in real time. That is not cynicism. That is clarity. And clarity, unlike likability, cannot be revoked. Your value is not negotiable.
It is non-transferable. It is yours by ontological right.
Every justification you offer is a surrender, not to the other person, but to the phantom jury inside your skull. That jury has been convened since childhood. Teachers, parents, peers, algorithms all voting on whether you deserve safety, love, space.
And every time you explain yourself, you hand them another ballot. Epictetus called this the habit of inattention, a slow erosion of self-command. When you rush to clarify, to contextualize, to soften your position, you are not defending your truth. You are outsourcing its legitimacy.
You are asking permission to exist as you are, and that permission, once granted, becomes debt. Debt that must be repaid in future concessions. Justification, ego reinforcement, dependency on external validation, increased reactivity. Silence is not passive. It is the active withdrawal of consent from the theater of perception. Your silence is not evasion. It is containment. It contains the storm of other people's projections, assumptions, and insecurities, without absorbing a single drop.
It contains your own fear of being misread, without letting that fear dictate your speech. This is where mental energy is conserved, not in the words you withhold, but in the neural pathways you stop reinforcing. Every unspoken defense is a synaptic pruning.
Every unissued explanation is a neuron freed from servitude. The ego does not want to be right. It wants to be seen as right. Silence denies it both. The crowd does not think. It echoes. It does not judge. It mirrors. And yet you have built your self-concept on its reflections, polishing your identity like a shield meant to deflect its gaze, rather than fortify your core.
Marcus Aurelius wrote his Meditations not for publication, but as private armor. He reminded himself daily, the opinions of the crowd are smoke and dust, not because they were meaningless, but because they were indifferent.
Like weather, like tides, like the rustling of leaves, they happen around you, not in you. To devalue the crowd is not contempt. It is ontological hygiene, the recognition that your inner citadel is not a democracy. Its gates do not open to every passing opinion.
Its walls do not tremble at every rumor. The inner citadel is not a fortress against others. It is a sanctuary for your ruling faculty. Every ounce of energy spent curating your image is debt owed to your future self.
When you stop measuring your choices against imagined consensus, you stop living in the subjunctive tense. What if they think? What if they misunderstand? What if they withdraw? You enter the indicative. I am. I choose. I act.
I rest. That shift from hypothetical to declarative is the birth of authority, not over others, but over your own attention, your own narrative, your own breath.
These 5 moves are not habits to adopt. They are fires to walk through, each one burning away a layer of the compliant self until only iron remains. 1. The unapologetic no, severing the reflex of automatic consent. 2. Embracing the villain role, accepting necessary misunderstanding as armor. 3.
The death of likability. Withdrawing your value from the marketplace of approval. 4. The silence of justification, starving the ego's addiction to external validation. 5.
The devaluation of the crowd, relocating your center of gravity from the world's opinion to your own unwavering attention. 5 fires of the iron mind. True power is not the ability to control others. It is the ability to remain unmoved by their judgment. This is not self-help.
This is self-reclamation. You are not becoming harder. You are becoming whole. The softness you mistook for kindness was actually fragmentation, the scattering of your attention across 100 mirrors, none reflecting your true face. Now you gather it back.
Not to be loved more, but to be more. Fully, irrevocably, dangerously. To be misunderstood is not failure. It is the first sign your soul has grown too large for their definitions.
You are already on this arc. You felt it in the pause before the lie, in the exhaustion after the agreement, in the quiet rage when you smiled through violation. That is not weakness calling. That is sovereignty knocking, insistent, patient, unimpressed by your excuses.
The Stoics did not wait for permission to be free. They declared it in silence, in action, in refusal. They knew the moment you stop begging the world to witness your goodness is the moment your goodness becomes unassailable.
Not because it is perfect, but because it is yours, unmediated, unexplained, unapologetic. What if your greatest act of courage is not speaking up, but refusing to explain yourself? You are not becoming a villain. You are remembering you were never a servant.
If this resonated, if you felt the old skin crack, subscribe. Not for more answers, but for the relentless, respectful pressure to keep shedding.